What gear do you need for racing and going fast in wing foiling? I recently participated in the Defi Wing, a long distance race with hundreds of participants, and I obviously wasn't prepared. If you haven't seen my Defi Wing experience video, I recommend you to check it out. Today I'm going to tell you what I learned, what gear you need for racing, and how to prepare for an event like the Defi Wing. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Welcome to Wind Addict. So before the Defi Wing, I naively thought that the type of foil is the most important aspect when putting together your race gear. So I had an Ibra S foil from Gong, which is one of their fastest foils, but I had it in the L size, which is 1,000 square centimeters. I thought, for my body weight, close to 90 kilos, this is an appropriate size that would make sense and would allow me to go fast. Well, I was wrong. What I learned is that you need much smaller foils. You need to do everything you can, even with a higher body weight, to use the smallest foil you possibly can. And to give you some examples, as you may have seen in my other video, I spoke to Mast, who won the event. He is a very fast French rider, and he rides Levitas gear. He rode a 500 square centimeter foil, the Levitas R5 SX. The foil that he rides has an 8.5 aspect ratio. That's high aspect, but not extreme. And his body weight, he said, was 79 kilograms. He used a 44-liter board with that, so a full-on sinker board. But of course, he's a pro, so keep that in mind. You may have seen in my other video that I had issues with ventilation. My mast was a bit too thick. My stab was too big for my foil, and my foil, again, was a bit big and slow. So bottom line, if you want to be competitive in racing, your foil should not be bigger than 700 square centimeters. In terms of masts, most racers now ride really long masts, and the thinner they are, the faster they are. The boards, of course, should allow you to get up on foil with these really small foils, but they cannot be too big either. Like if you're going very fast in strong winds, you need good amount of control, and having a ton of swing weight probably won't help with that unless you're racing in really light winds. The next time I go to Defi Wing, I'm probably going to go with an 80-liter Crusader 5.8 board. That is a partial sinker for me, but still should allow me to use a fairly small foil and get up on foil with that. I would use the HM107 mast from Gong and a foil like the Ibra S in size S, which is 610 square centimeters. I think the foil is the most important thing when it comes to being competitive in racing. But if you really want to get to the top spots, then a wing dedicated to racing, or at least a very powerful wing, would be helpful. The ideal wing shape would be a double profile, like the Ozone Fusion or the Gong Pulse double profile. So with the gear that I had, I only reached about 18 knots, which is 33 kilometers an hour. And the top guys had an average speed of, 30 knots or slightly more, which is 57 kilometers an hour, which is crazy. Mast posted on Instagram that his personal record on speed was around 37 knots. So these are insanely fast speeds. I think you only need to reach about 25 knots of average speed, so 45 kilometers an hour, to get your placement between 100 and 150th at the Defi Wing. So that should be achievable with a small foil. Another important aspect of gear is the harness line on your wing. Of course, in such a race, you have to use a harness. That's a no-brainer. And with the harness lines, I previously thought, also from the descriptions on the Gong website, that shorter ones are better and preferred by better riders. But for racing, and especially long distance racing, I think you actually need quite long ones. If you also look at the pro riders at the Defi Wing. I was riding most of the event with just the front foot in the foot strap. That's how I'm used to riding. But then I realized that on some parts of the race course, also depending on the wind direction a little bit, it can actually be very beneficial to have the back foot in the foot strap as well. Having the back foot in the foot strap can give you extra stability and allow you to control the foil better at high speeds. I've seen several of the good guys having both feet in the foot straps, and you also see the foot straps being quite far apart. Robby Naish talks about it in a recent video about going fast in wing foiling. However, Simon Burda, the Ozone rider who came 7th, so super fast, doesn't even have the back foot strap installed. And especially if you go downwind, you don't want to have your back foot in the foot strap. With foot straps, of course, always be careful. Don't make them too tight. If you have some high-speed crashes, you don't want to be stuck in the foot strap. So now I want to talk about the Defi Wing as an example for, a big wing foil race event. I think the dates have already been set for 2025, from the 26th to the 28th of May. I signed up this year in early February, but ideally you start planning this earlier. By the end of the year, you should look at accommodation options if you don't go with an RV or camper van. Next year, they're going to open the event to 600 wing foilers. This year it was 400, so it's growing quite significantly. The event overall this year still is very French. The Defi Wing, the Defi Wind with the windsurfers, that's very, very international. I think more than half of the people come from outside of France. And the Defi Wing, that was still a lot more local. I think it was 90% of participants were French. The first skippers meeting, it took almost 1.5 hours. I think they could make it shorter. That was actually one of my criticisms towards them. But overall, the event is very well organized. They really know their stuff, and it's clear that they've been running these types of events for many years. The race course can change from one race to the next, so always make sure that you're there for the skippers meetings in time. The best kind of source of information is to follow their Instagram stories. They have an official Defi Wing channel. One kind of unknown was how to deal with the time and the breaks in between races. How long will they be? It's not always the same. It depends on the conditions. Sometimes they do 3, and I think in extreme cases, they may even do 4 races in one day. So it may not be worth it to take off your wetsuit, depending on how cold or warm it is. Maybe you can put something over your wetsuit to keep you a bit warm. Or if it's cold, ideally you have 2 wetsuits, and after the first race, you just change into a dry wetsuit directly. Then you're ready to go, and your body's not cooling out. Overall, I think it's very important to have good amounts of food ready like the whole day. They have, of course, some food stalls there where you can buy some food and snacks here and there. But I think, if you race and have like 3 races a day, you really want large amounts of carbs and protein kind of ready, ideally at your car where you have your gear, and not always depend on having to buy your food somewhere. The weather and wind can get quite cold. This Tramontana wind tends to push the warm water away from the surface, so be prepared for that. I was wearing a 4 mil wetsuit for all races, and that was fine, but my head got a bit cold in several races. So then in one race, I actually put a neoprene hood on, and that was super nice. That was very comfortable. And so I recommend having that ready. Now coming to the strategies and tactics for the start. I'm not the best guy to ask. In my Defi Wing experience video, you've seen that I messed up most of the starts, but I have some takeaways for you. So, of course, ideally, you stay up on foil and you go over the start line, and you jibe kind of back and forth in a stable manner with long-ish reaches so that you can plan exactly when you will reach the starting line based on your countdown watch, your starting watch, which you definitely need for an event like this. If you're not very good or not very comfortable, or you're scared that, you know, you're going to mess up a jibe, then you may try to just kind of taxi, you know, float around close to the start line and then just get going in time for the race to start. The problem with that is it doesn't give you a true reference point. It's hard to know how far you are from the starting line and how long it will take you to get there. If you do stable reaches with jibes beforehand, you can estimate that much better. And also there may be a lull, may be hard for you to get going. So there's a lot of uncertainty there and it can really mess up your starts. Also, the reaches that you do before the race starts, make them long enough. If you cross the starting line going back away from the race course too late, then you have this wall of other racers coming towards you. And you're supposed to jibe in that. It's not possible, basically, or very hard to do. So, you know, find a good rhythm, you know, maybe going 1 minute one side, 1 minute the other, and then so time it so that you reach the starting line when the starting boat is crossing it in front of you. Of course, we have the added challenge of the starting boat. So you have to factor in the time. How far up on the starting line are you? How close to the beach or how close to the buoy are you? And how long will it take the starting boat to pass the point of the starting line where you want to cross? Most of the pros, they cross the starting line at the downwind point, so at the buoy where the starting boat starts. This is the easiest one to time, and you're the first one to get going. Of course, if your goal is not to get to the top 50, you can start at the other side, at the upwind side, close to the beach. There you will have less chop, less people, and you can have a smoother ride to start the race with. And go have a look at other YouTubers talking about racing gear and going fast. Robby Naish recently released a video about that was interesting. There's then Gordo from the UK, who puts out a lot of content for racing and going fast. But overall, I feel like there's a bit of a lack of information out there. Not too many people post content about racing and racing gear and wing foiling. I hope this info was helpful to you. Let me know. Have you tried any racing? Are you interested in going fast, wing foiling? Put it in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.